Okay, one of the most important pieces of information we need to get before we start anything with an automatic irrigation system is the flow, and if you can also preferably the pressure coming from your hose. Now, I guess by the time the water gets from your mains at the front of the house to here, the pressure's already dropped quite a bit through all the pipe work, but obviously this is the best place to connect up an irrigation system. If you've got to connect into the mains, it's quite a lot more work. You'll need a plumber to do that. But if you don't get enough pressure and flow at this point, that's what you might have to do. So I'm hopeful that we'll have enough pressure at the outlet to and flow to be able to put the irrigation system and connect it to one of the taps. Now, the most important thing before you start this, make sure all the water is off in the house so you get an accurate measure of what your flow in pressure is. 2 bits of gear I'm going to use for that. I've set up a little pressure gauge like this, which you may not be able to do or get a hold of. If you can't get something like this, we can lend you one from the yard here in Hamilton, the Complete Landscapes yard, or if you want to get a hold of a gauge like this yourself. If not, at least get the flow. It's preferable to have both pressure and flow, but if you can't, that's what the bucket's for. So I'll do collect 2 pieces of information that will help me do up the design to get all the right information for our system. So you need to do it as close as you can to the tap, so I've got a little setup here to connect onto that. So we'll do that first, get pressure, and then we'll get flow. Okay, so I've disconnected the hose, and I've got this valve open here, so this will allow me to control the water as it goes through. So I'll just connect this up. Now I want maximum pressure I can get. Okay, so that's at full flow now. No pressure on the gauge, but as I slowly close it off, the pressure's starting to increase. It'll settle down. So that's settled around 300 kPa or 3 bar in metric, or about 42, 43 in imperial PSI. So 300 kPa is a number that I'll record for the pressure at this particular outlet. Like, it might vary at other outlets around the house, but we'll work on that 300 kPa and see how that goes with regard to the design of the system. Okay, so I'll just release that again. Now, the other piece of information I get is flow. They're obviously pressure and flow are very closely related, but it just gives me another little bit of information to work with. If you haven't got a pressure gauge, you can at least do the flow test, because that will give you quite a lot of information and should be, in most cases, probably give you enough to be able to do a system. But obviously, the more information you can get, the better it'll help with the design of the right sort of outlets and heads for your lawn. So all I've got is the trusty iPhone with a timer. In this case, it's an 18-litre bucket. You might have a 10-litre bucket to make the maths a bit easier, but this is a bucket I've got, as long as you know what's in it. And the same deal, as you get the water running flat out, no water going in the house, and see how long it takes to fill up the bucket, and that should give us an idea of flow. And again, you could get quite wet doing this, and hopefully I won't wet my iPhone, but I'll get this running flat out first. That's full bore, and I'll start now. Stop there. Try not to get too wet. Okay. It's not the most accurate thing in the world, but it's pretty good. But that gives me about 21.73 seconds to be exact. So I'll work on about 21 seconds, 22 seconds to fill an 18-litre bucket. So that I can go away now and do my calculation for flow, and I've got pressure and flow, and that'll be the basis to start the design for the system. So 2 pretty important pieces of information. As I said, if you can't get the pressure, at least get the flow. And all you need is a bucket and a stopwatch like this. Okay. Okay, we did the measurement with the bucket and the pressure gauge. Now we need that information now to start working out a bit more about the design. So the first thing we need to do with the pressure and the flow calculations, we had the pressure, we knew that was around about 3 bar or 300 kPa. So we've got that from the pressure gauge. The next thing we have to work out is the flow, which is a little bit more involved in that, but it's not too difficult. So as you recall, the flow, we got an 18 litre bucket, and that filled in about 21.6 seconds. So we now have to convert those two pieces of information into litres per minute. Well, the first thing we need to do is to do litres per second, which is 18 divided by 21.6. Then we multiply that by 60 seconds, which gives us litres per minute, and that gives us 50 litres per minute. So again, we just 18 litres in 21.6 seconds, divide the 18 by the 21.6, and then multiply by 60 to convert it to minutes from seconds. And that comes up with, in this case, a fairly round number, which is handy, which is 50 litres per minute. Now that piece of information and this piece of information are very important, particularly this flow. Like I said, if you're unable to get the pressure, you can do the design without that. It is handy to have it, but this is very important. So we need to get that litres per minute to be able to now work out the zones and how many heads we need in certain areas. Hopefully that makes sense. Important thing to consider is where you're going to actually put your manifold and your flow connection. Now the tap that I did my initial sample on proved to be not the best choice because there was no power near that particular location. So I had to choose another outlet around the side of the house to do my final installation. So I needed to go through the same process because you can't assume because the flow and the pressure is correct at one location, it will be the same at another. So let's try and have a look at another tap outlet, the one where I'm actually going to put my installation. Now in that case, the pressure was also 3 bar as measured by the pressure gauge. But the big difference was it took a lot longer for the bucket to fill up, indicating there was less flow from that tap. And there may be a number of reasons for that, but either way, the flow was less. So I had to consider that in my calculation. So it's much slower or less flow. So I did my calculation as before, the 18 litre bucket divided by, in this case, 36 seconds times 60 seconds to give me 30 litres per minute, which was much less than the 50 litres per minute on the other side of the house. But this is the flow that I need to use in my calculation. Now another really important thing that I didn't do in the other calculation, but what we should always do is we should build some margin into this because there are slight errors in our calculation. We are only filling up a bucket. We also haven't considered that when the irrigation system comes on, there might be someone who turns a tap on somewhere in the house and you don't want your irrigation to just stop completely. And also when you come to install some heads and a few other things in the yard, things might be slightly different to what you thought in your design. So you want a little bit of room to move. So I usually allow for a 20% margin in the calculation. So assume there's actually 20% less water than you measured. So in that case, it's 80% of the 30 litres or 20% less, which in this case is 24 litres per minute. Now that's quite a bit less than the other tap, but that is the flow that I will be using to do my design based on. So it's very important that when I'm doing my calculation of zones and the number of heads that I use, that I don't exceed 24 litres per minute on any zone, because the heads won't work appropriately and the system won't work. So that's my key piece of information. So coming back up, 3 bar is the pressure, and more importantly, 24 litres per minute is my flow to commence the calculations. If this video was helpful, you can get a lot more information on our website, completelandscapes.co.nz, or check out other videos on our YouTube channel.